Hello YouTube! Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm gonna be sharing with you some moving tips on a budget. I'd like to think that I know a little bit about saving money while moving, considering the fact that I just moved across the entire country from East Coast to West Coast, from DC to Los Angeles, and oh boy, has this year been chaotic. So we've been in the LA area now for about 3 months. We've just kind of settled down. I've kind of figured out all of our finances. Make sure you stay until the end of the tips because I'm gonna be sharing with you the total expense that it costs for us to move across the country, things you probably maybe didn't think about before you started planning your move. So without further ado, let's get started. If you guys are new to my channel, I need a wedding ring. Ah! I promise I'm married. All right, if you're new to my channel, my name is Adrienne. I've been gone for a little bit, but I am back. Let's start with a little overview of our move, just so you guys get a little bit of an idea of what to expect in terms of costs. So like I said, we were moving from the DC area all the way to Los Angeles. I just got out of breath from running to the bathroom. Okay. Moved from the DC area to Los Angeles area, Los Angeles County. We moved here for my husband to go to grad school. He is prior military, and so he's on the GI Bill right now. So that's how his tuition and our living expenses are being paid for right now. On top of that, in the DC area, we were living in a 2-bedroom, about 1,000 square feet, a little bit over 1,000 square feet that I had purchased before we met. If you've been following my videos for a while, I bought the house in 2020. I lived there for 3 years, one of those years married to my husband, and that is now being rented out. So that being said, that's about how much furniture we were moving. My first tip is to sell as much furniture, as much large things as you are comfortable with before you move. So I say feel comfortable with. Some people, including myself, have pieces of furniture that are very sentimental. Like my bookshelves over here were my aunt's, and obviously I didn't want to sell those. So there are certain pieces of furniture that were really important to me to keep, but other things were not. A lot of things were just functional pieces. The thing about moving is the more they're moved, the more damage that comes to them. So for us, there were several pieces of furniture that we didn't love enough to bring with us. So it was ideal for us to sell those so that we didn't have to move with them and then them get damaged. On top of that, I figured out that a lot of times moving to places far away, it's a lot easier and a lot cheaper to sell things where you are and then just buy new things when you get there. A lot of things aren't worth as much money, like the older they get, like TVs, for example. We sold both of our TVs. We were also downsizing from a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom. So we got rid of quite a bit of furniture, even in our 1-bedroom apartment here. It is still fairly crowded, I feel like. We got rid of a lot of furniture and I still feel like it's pretty filled up here. The only really major thing that we did bring with us was our couch. And that was because we were actually thinking about selling our couch. And at one point I was like, I think being in a new area, it'll be really important for us to still have something that feels comfortable and feels familiar. So our couch was large. It's a large sectional that we did bring with us that did take up a lot of space. So with the money that we got from selling a lot of our furniture, we ended up actually using to fund our move because it was already really expensive. But if you are in a place, you can hold on to that money and just take that money and spend it on new furniture wherever you end up going. All right, the second one may sound a little frugal, a really nice word to substitute cheap. And this may sound a little cheap, but you know what? It saved us a lot of money, and that was saving packing supplies prior to our move. So I remember looking at like boxes and bubble wrap. Bubble wrap was like a small roll of it was like $25, and I knew we were gonna be needing a lot of it. So prior to our move, anytime we got like a package in the mail that had bubble wrap in it, I held on to it. We had a little part in our closet that I saved for moving supplies, and my husband and I were talking about it like yesterday, I think. And he was like, I
thought you were crazy for saving all of it. All of that stuff, I thought it was cheap.
Until we moved and you used all of it and we didn't have to buy any moving materials. And so it saved us quite a bit of money to save the bubble wrap, save anything. We also ended up getting some boxes for free on Facebook. Sometimes people give boxes away. So we tried to get as much free stuff as we could. Not everything we got was free, but we also did use a lot of like our clothing and like soft things to pad things that were breakable. So we were able to do that as a replacement for bubble wrap and stuff like that. So there were also a few things, like we did buy some moving blankets to use for our couch that we actually ended up selling once we got here. And that way we actually didn't lose any money on that. We broke even on the moving blankets that we bought. My third tip is to consider more of a DIY move. So what I mean by that is there are certainly different tiers of moving. I'd say the first tier, if you want to spend a whole lot of money, is a full service mover, and they come in, they pack all of your stuff, they wrap everything, and then they bring it in a moving van and they bring it to wherever you're going. You could also go the route of packing your own stuff, renting a truck like a U-Haul, and you can either hire movers to load everything into the truck, or you can do it yourself. Or what we ended up doing was getting a large shipping container and filling that and having them pick up the shipping container and moving it all the way to Los Angeles. The reason we ended up doing that is number one, because it was the cheapest way to move across the country. Moving across the country is already so incredibly expensive, and we were in a place where we had the time and we were physically able to pack our own stuff. Something I think I figured out was like, since I'm the owner of my belongings, I'm gonna be taking best care of my stuff. Like, I don't think another person is going to be taking care of my stuff the way I would take care of it. And I've also heard of people's stuff being stolen by movers. So that's kind of why I'm pro packing my own stuff. We did hire movers once we got to LA to unpack our stuff into our apartment. And that was mostly because we didn't know anybody here to help us unpack everything. When we were back in DC, we ended up getting a bunch of our friends to help load our stuff, but I did pack most of our boxes myself. I'd highly recommend hiring movers. They were incredibly efficient, and they just helped us move like a lot of large items into a single place. The fourth tip I have is to get quotes from multiple places if you can. So like I said, you can go through many different tiers. You can get the full service movers, you can get a U-Haul, different trucks. We ended up going with a shipping container, and we actually ended up going with a company called PackRat. So you probably have heard of Pods before. PackRat is a competitor of Pods, and the reason we went with PackRat was because, well, one, they gave us a better deal than Pods. We originally got a Pods quote, and then we went to get a quote from PackRat, which ended up being more than our Pods one, but then we told them that we had gotten a lower quote from Pods, and they ended up beating the quote that we got from Pods. So that's the reason we went with PackRat. They also very much so convinced me because their container is like a lot sturdier than a Pods container is. And then on top of that, I have an American Express Gold card, and they had a offer for $50 off if you spent $200 through PackRat. So that's the reason we ended up going through PackRat. I'm pretty sure they also gave a military discount. Those weren't the only quotes that we got. We got a quote from Zippy Shell, which ended up being very expensive. And I have like a lot of great things to say about PackRat. Like the people who delivered the shipping container and the people who picked it up, they were just very efficient. And so I would highly recommend PackRat in my opinion. Thankfully, we didn't have any issues there. Really, nothing got broken. Nothing major was broken. We had a few casualties, like small things, but nothing big was broken, so that ended up being the best way to go for us. My next tip is to consider driving your own car versus having your car shipped. I had gotten several quotes from several different people to ship our car across the country. We actually ended up selling Noah's car when we were in Virginia because I don't think it would have made it across the country, and having a car in California is pretty expensive. So we ended up deciding to go down to one car while we were here. It's been pretty convenient for us to do that and saving us a lot of money right now. But we did decide to drive our car across the country versus having a mover move our car. And that was simply because, I got a lot of quotes, and I think the best quote I got was about $1,500, but I got a range of quotes anywhere from like $1,500 all the way up to like $3,000. So pretty much from the get-go, I had decided that we would drive our car across the country. And the way I broke down the costs for that was the US Department of Transportation values driving your car per mile at about 54 cents per mile. So I did that times 3,000 miles plus the $800 in gas that it would cost, ended up being about $1,600. And we ended up making a road trip out of it, and we stopped at some families along the way. So I would definitely consider just the different options you have in terms of driving your own car if you're able to, or having your car shipped. I would say if you got a good quote, it may end up being equal, but for a lot of the quotes that we got, they were much higher than it would cost to ship or to drive our car across the country ourselves. And now I'm gonna break down all of our costs in our move which was a lot, but did it on a budget the best that we could. So I'm gonna first do our moving expenses. So that was like specifically stuff that we were moving, obviously. So the first thing was our moving supplies. Like, we saved as much as we could, used as much materials that we had, and that cost us all about $90 for boxes and stretch wrap and tape and all that stuff. Our pack rat was originally $4,209, and then we got the $50 off in the American Express offer, and then we ended up tipping the guy who dropped off our pack rat $20. We also hired movers when we were here once we got to California, which I said, and that was $228, plus we gave a $40 tip because there were 2 guys that helped. And those were our specific moving expenses. The next thing were our car expenses in terms of moving our car across the country. Our first expense was gas. Gas cost us a little bit over $800. And then miles on our car, we put about 3,000 miles on our car. And like I said, we did the 54 cents per mile evaluation. And so we ended up actually driving from, our route was DC to Minneapolis to LA. And that was because we were visiting my husband's family when we were there. In terms of that evaluation, it ended up being about $1,600. That mostly includes just the value of the car, how much we use, and then also maintenance on the car. On top of that, once we got here, which is not something that people think about, is that we had to re-register our car, get new driver's license. Re-registering our car once we got to California was $351, and that was for one car. And then we each had to renew our driver's license when we got here, and that was about $40 for each of us. So the total of our entire move cost us about $7,887, which, moving across the country, very, very expensive. I think we did the best we could with what we had. Our year has been incredibly expensive. Even before we were on our move, since we were going to be driving across the country, we put in like all the maintenance on our car to make sure that it was good to go 3,000 miles. We probably put about $4,000 in terms of car maintenance, and that was also because our car was at the point in its life cycle where like you put in a lot of the maintenance so that it can run for the next half of its life. That was also expensive. We also had, right before we moved, we ended up having to do a bathroom remodel because we had a water leak, which I'm pretty sure is one of the last videos that I posted. We were also not working from June until August. So with all of that, we blew through about $8,000 of our emergency fund. That all being said, it's been a very expensive year, and finances have been something that has been like very much so top of our priority in terms of getting settled in once we were here. So I'm hoping to be making some more videos in the coming weeks and months, just sharing our finances and our life and what we were doing in terms of saving. So if you would love to come along, I would love for you guys to like, share, subscribe to this channel, and thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.